fighting, action, debauchery. Welcome to another episode of the Game of Thrones podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the third episode of the final 8th season. But wait, there is a disagreement. Two of us were very disappointed with the episode and one of us was not. Jake, go ahead and introduce yourself since you're on my side of this debate.
Hi, I'm Jake. I hate this episode.
I'm Dustin. I didn't hate it, but I was very disappointed with it. And Aaron, go ahead and introduce yourself. You're going to be our opposition today.
Alright, I'm Aaron, and this was the first episode in like 3-ish seasons that I loved.
Damn. Actually, go ahead and start it off. Just to...
Me?
Yeah, since...
Alright.
So it's not just like me and Jake just like shitting on it the whole time.
Okay, awesome. So I didn't watch the episode last night, actually. I was gonna watch this episode this morning, but then I had trouble sleeping, and in the middle of the night I got up to pee, and then I was like, Game of Thrones is just sitting there, like, not accessed by me yet. So I just went, like, into my computer room, shirtless, with no socks on, nothing, and just turned it on, and I was, like, really, like, that feeling when you just wake up in the middle of the night and you're really tired, but also, like, awake. And then, so, and one more thing to say before I get into how I felt about it was, I used somebody else's HBO account. I'm, like, not in touch with them anymore. And for whatever reason, when I clicked on it, it started in the middle of the episode wherever they left off. And for whatever reason, out of the corner of my eye, I saw the screen and then immediately stopped myself from looking at the screen. And what I thought I saw was Daenerys with, like, blood all over her as a White Walker. And I didn't see it really clearly, but that's what I thought. That's what my mind made it up. So as I was seeing, like, the intro to the episode when it's really slow and everything, I was preparing myself for it to get really grossly upsetting later on. I was like, oh, God, shit is going to hit the fan in ways I didn't think of.
And you weren't disappointed?
No, weirdly. I'll get into that later. But, as I watched, like, them at fucking, probably, they had the battle at probably 4 a.m., and I watched the show at 4 a.m., I felt like the stress of having to fucking fight something in the dark like that when you're tired. And I will say that almost every main character had a shit ton of plot armor, just like they had with the previous 3 seasons. But, and I don't think that's going away at all anytime soon, but the way they handled the episode somehow got me to feel very stressed about the characters and really involved in the characters, even though they had plot armor, and I had no idea how the episode was going to turn out, really.
Okay. It's fair enough. Yeah, and you actually texted me at 4 a.m. my time. You're like, oh, what the hell, Arya, or whatever, and I'm like, oh, did you watch it? So I thought that was kind of funny. So it must have been like 6 a.m. by the time you finished it.
My girlfriend was sleeping, but when Arya, oh my God, that's like, I think the one thing I have to talk about in the episode, when Arya let out that primal scream, and he caught her, and then she killed him, those 3 beats, I was shouting like, oh my God, I couldn't contain myself, even though she was like sleeping in the other, that was actually really inconsiderate of me. But I was shouting, yeah. And I just thought it was, I don't know, I love when a story does a twist that truly makes sense, but that I wasn't expecting. So a twist not just for a twist's sake, not just like M. Night Shyamalan, but a twist that made sense all along, but that you were never thinking it would happen that way. Just after all that Arya's been through, her way of coping with that was to basically destroy her own humanity. She literally calls herself no one. And then for that humanity to just return in that primal scream that she does, I was, really happy with that, surprisingly. Even though it basically destroys all of the lore that I was thinking of,
Yep.
all of the magical stuff, all of the stuff that I love about looking into A Song of Ice and Fire. For whatever reason, I cared more about the characters than any of the prophecies and all that cool stuff that I loved. In a way, I feel like this episode is similar to spoiler alert, Star Wars The Last Jedi, where they totally revert anything that the fans were thinking would happen and do a big twist. So I'll stop talking for a little bit, and it can be somebody else's turn.
Funny enough, I got the same exact feeling of the Star Wars movies from this, but mostly because I've been calling this episode The Phantom Menace, because for that same reason where it just kind of broke down all the lore and forgot everything that the show originally set up and just seemed to throw it out the window. I personally hated that Arya scene. Just the way it was executed. I mean, I have no problem with her being the one to kill the Ice King, but I don't know. I just didn't feel like this episode was handled very well. There's a lot of clunky moments. My favorite scene, though, was that scene when that one character's in danger and then somebody saves them.
Oh, I know exactly which scene you're talking about and when.
Yeah.
The whole episode?
When and where.
Yeah. Because they only did that like 13 times. John's in danger. He gets saved at the last second. Bran's in danger. He gets saved at the last second. Sam's in danger. He gets saved in the last second. Brienne's in danger. Saved in the last second. Jamie's in danger. Brienne runs all the way across the fucking bridge. Saves her. Dany's in danger. Jorah just runs out of the castle and saves her in the last second. But I digress. I'm going to let Jake give his thoughts.
First off, I want to say that all the stuntmen, the prop design, the set design, just about anything having to do with practical effects
And the music.
bringing this battle to life was superb. It was amazing. Those people need way more credit for what they built and what they accomplished. With that said, all of it was ruined by having awful, awful lighting. And then the story, in my opinion, was just god-awful writing. And it just ended up being a way too drawn-out battle with not a lot learned and not a lot gained. And I think I'll just start with my thing with Arya, because I think that's where we kind of split. I think I agree with you with how the scene went, but at the same time, I just cannot stand for the life of me that, one, Jon had no confrontation with the Night King whatsoever. We've been building this up for 7 seasons, and Jon doesn't even hit swords with him. I know that could be like a little fan servicey that I wanted that, but I watched HBO put out a Game of Thrones video for behind the scenes. It's a 40-minute long video that they put out today for this episode. And the producer, D.B. Weiss, was like, oh yeah, we alluded to the cat's paw dagger in a book, and Arya used it to kill the Night King because it's Valyrian steel, but, we're just going to leave it up to debate for however you think it killed the Night King. It doesn't matter. Fans could figure it out themselves. And I think that right there is what made me truly hate this episode, is that it felt like the executive producer / writer, D.B. Weiss, just gave up and he doesn't care anymore. And that just blew my mind that happened. I just wish they could have done something where it was Jon and Arya taking down the Night King. But they didn't do that, and I think they just went for pure shock with having Arya do it, which doesn't matter who kills the Night King in the end. No, it just matters that he dies. I just think it was not a very good story payoff to have her do it over someone else.
Well, and just piggybacking off that DB Wise thing you were saying, I haven't watched the 40-minute special yet. I'm actually very interested to see how they crafted the battle, because I do agree some of the best parts about this episode were just, the design of the battalions and whatnot, the effects, and more to me, the music. I love the music to this. But after the episode, I don't know if it's DB Wise or Benioff, but they're mentioning how they can't give every character a send-off death because that would take up way too much time. But they're like, but we gave one to Lyanna Mormont. And the way he says it, he basically says, we know that this scene really doesn't have anything to do with much, but we just felt like putting it in there, and I don't think people will blame us for doing so. So they do kind of allude to the fact that they don't really give a shit about telling a story anymore, and they just want to do things that look cool. And don't get me wrong, the battle did look cool, but I don't know, it just kind of started falling flat most of the time.
And I also want to add in that behind the scenes that the director of the episode said he wanted to create tension, but he was like, yeah, I knew no character is going to die, so I just wanted to make the illusion that people were going to die. And I think they did that so heavy-handed because they would show characters in such dire situations where in any other episode of Game of Thrones, they'd be dead, but in this situation, they just kept surviving for no reason other than plot armor. I can't find a reason why Sam survived under a pile of undead.
Yeah, as John's looking at him like, yeah, he'll be fine for plot reasons.
Yeah, he's fine. It's okay. It's not like it's my best friend.
I couldn't.
They said that they thought it was in character that.
Yeah, John would just let him die.
I agree with you 100% about the plot armor, but I actually did, when I was watching the show, I did get that John was letting his friend die in that situation because it was like it's a losing battle. He's about to lose like literally everyone. But I do agree with the plot armor being heavy in not just this episode, but in the whole show, like for the past few years. And I'm sure that's actually part of the reason why it's taking George R. Martin so long to finish the books, because I don't think there's going to be that amount of plot armor where Ser Jorah just magically appears next to Daenerys, and the Hound and the Fire Sword guy magically go near Arya, who shows up with Melisandre, and Jaime is always with Brienne, who's always saving, and then Sam is always with his Night's Watch buddy. Like, those kinds of things are, I feel like, only done because you have to dumb it down in some way when you're so far away from the books and have so little time to, like, cover everything, really.
Well, it's definitely...
I was just going to say, so at this point, I definitely am forgiving a little bit of that, maybe because I've come to expect it.
And yeah, I would agree that, we can't expect it to be as intricate as it started off, because things were being set up that, like you're saying, George R. R. Martin probably doesn't even know where he wants to do with it. And George R. R. Martin's even said that the reason why the books aren't finished is because he doesn't know what to do with half the storylines. And in the show, they just killed off every character that they didn't know what to do with in season 6. They're just like, oh, let's kill them, let's kill them, let's kill them. Don't know what to do with them. Peace. But at the same time, now that we have gotten to the end of the series, and it seems like the directors and the writers and whatnot, or not the directors, I should say the showrunners, mostly just DB Wise and Benioff, don't seem to give any regard whatsoever to even trying anymore. And I would forgive them too, because I've said that in, I think, the first episode or the second episode, where it's like, I know we have to come to expect that the writing's going to be a little off and things may not make too much sense. But when your only plot device is to save somebody in the last second and then you do it every single goddamn time, it's just lazy. Like, there's not trying, and there's writing the episode the night before and saying, here you go, teacher. Can I get an A for this? It's like, you can just tell they just don't give a shit. And it does feel like watching The Phantom Menace or something like that, where it's just ultimately, it may not be a terrible final product, but it's just so disappointing. And it's so sad to see, especially after waiting years and years. And like you kind of mentioned in the beginning, where you care about the lore behind them and you want to find out the purpose of the Night King and the dead and what Bran can do in the battle. And Bran's whole purpose during the entire battle was to just look through the crow's eyes and do nothing. He's like, hey, good job, Theon. Thanks for dying for me. I guess I could have told you wait like 13 seconds and Arya would save you, but, thanks.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't mind starting backwards, so from the end of the episode. And just my number one question I cannot get over. If the Night King is pure evil, and he really does not have a character, then why does he have to kill? Why does he have to be the one who kills Bran? He could have just stayed hundreds of miles up north, or even just somewhere out of sight, out of mind, and just let the undead take over. He did not have to be there. They don't have any character reason why he has to be the one to strike down Bran. Well, they've established that he doesn't really have any pride or any sort of character whatsoever, other than he's pure evil. So why did he...
Well, that's the thing. They didn't establish any of that leading up to it. So when there is a big showdown between him and Bran, there's literally nothing at stake. We don't know why we should care. They just say, you need to care in this moment. But it's like, why do we as a viewer need to care? It's like they're treating us like we're stupid. Like, we're telling you how to feel now.
Why do I even care about Bran if... Okay, so he's the ongoing memories stored in the Werewood network. They'd never establish what would be the issue if we lost that.
Well...
And sorry, go ahead.
I feel like they did this with a couple characters too, where they just kind of set them up and we just have to remember how much we enjoyed them in the past. Because if you remember the Battle of Blackwater, the scene with the Hound when he sees the fire and then he runs off and he cowers. And he's like, just off getting drunk or whatever. They did the same thing in this episode with his character. It's like, oh, he saw a little bit of fire. So we're supposed to put two and two together, like, remember, this is why you like the Hound. Because he is facing fear and now eventually is going to go off and do what he has to do and save someone. Like, remember, that's why you like the Hound. It's like, well, there's really nothing at stake going on for his character. He just saw some fire and now he's running away cowering again. Like, why? Didn't he hasn't changed at all? Like, his character over 8 seasons, like, nothing. It didn't really feel as genuine this time. Or with Sam kind of being a coward in the beginning. He's kind of like holding the whatever in his hands in the very beginning of the episode. People are like, oh, trying to drag him into battle. And when they retreat into the walls, Jorah has to like push him into like fighting again. It's like, okay, so we're just... Remember when this character was like this, so they haven't changed over 8 seasons at all? Like, nothing's changed for these guys? I don't know. Nothing felt earned. Nothing made sense. The characters didn't make sense. Their actions didn't make sense. It's like, I don't know why we were supposed to care. And then, yeah, Arya just jumps out of nowhere and kills him because she's a ninja. But why did she even start having problems fighting the dead? There's like 8 of them inside that library, and now she's afraid to fight them. But 10 minutes ago, before bumping her head a little bit, she's fighting hundreds of them like they're nothing, but all of a sudden she gets scared. Why is she scared? Like, I just don't get it.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I felt. Just, it felt like there was so much lost potential, and I think ending the Night King right now and then, well, we don't know because obviously the next episodes haven't come out, but I'm assuming the next 3 are going to be purely focused on Cersei, because what else is, unless they decide to bring the Night King back, which some people are speculating, I don't think he will, because there's no reason to bring that character back.
I doubt it.
Yeah, that would be dumb.
I think they fell in love with the human interactions, and they just want to get back to that. I feel like DB and Benioff or whatever, I think they cared more about the human interactions than they ever cared about the White Walkers and the supernatural.
And for the record, I do as well, but I was hoping that there was actually some sort of human element to the White Walker, or at least some sort of element that was a little more complicated than, like, them providing a function and the way to stop them was to pull the plug and make them all fall like dominoes. But, like, that, in that way, I do have a problem with what this episode means to the series, and I'm not really looking forward to the rest of the series in the same way that I was looking forward to the rest of the series this morning. I really liked the episode itself and everything that happened. I was glued to my seat. But I do agree with you. Like, where's the series gonna go now? Is it really just gonna be Cersei for 3 episodes? That's a lot of Cersei when in the books I don't even really see her as a villain.
Well, in the books, the way it left it in the last one, she basically is at the point where she just got publicly shamed because she admitted to all the guys that she slept with out of marriage, and basically they're trying to overthrow her after Tywin died because it's like a power move to kind of sit on the Iron Throne and whatnot. Because it's interesting in the books how everybody has a plan fighting for the throne, whether you realize it or not. Like, and then there's other people across the seas with Dany fighting for power, trying to become king and whatnot with like Histar Zolorak, and then you have Barristan Selmy fighting the honor of the queen as he's trying to get her overseas to the Iron Throne and whatnot. And we started off like that in the show, and I guess the whole point of the show is just that. It's who's going to sit on the throne at the end. But now we just have 4 pieces in play. We have Cersei, Jon, Dany, and Gendry. And it's going to come down to like the 4 of them. And I'm not very compelled by that story. Because I thought the main story of Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones was the dead. But apparently they're just a side story. So if they're a side story, why did we spend the past 3 episodes on just them? If they're that meaningless, why did you give all these characters a send-off episode and build it up and try to do all these things with it just to kind of drop it? And one thing, I thought it was really funny that everybody in the room with Tyrion, who was sitting around the fire in the second episode of season 8, when he says, "I think we're all going to live." And they all kind of laugh at him and shrug it off. And those were all the characters that lived. I thought that was kind of funny.
I didn't notice it.
Oh, that's the first thing I noticed, because I was like, oh, look, Brienne's alive, Pod's alive, Jaime's alive, Davos is alive, and then I was like, oh, those are all the guys that he's like, I bet we'll all live. Just kind of like a little throwaway line. But yeah,
I'm let down like you, where they established over the entire show that titles and sitting on the throne truly does not matter if you can't live a life worth living. Like, if the dead just took over, who cares about your titles? Because they certainly don't.
When it makes me...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it makes me question what the entire show is about now. Because it's like, if it wasn't about the dead in the end, and it is just about sitting on a piece of plastic or a metal throne, like, That's really what this entire show was all about. That's it. I know it's called a Game of
Right.
Thrones, but that's just alluding to the politics of the world. The book is called A Song of Ice and Fire because it's about something bigger than just sitting on a throne. Like the first book kind of establishes the politics of the world, and that's why it's called a Game of Thrones. The show being called a Game of Thrones is just like a cool title, I thought. I didn't realize, oh, it's really just about who's going to sit on a goddamn throne for like 30 years and then die. Like that's not.
That's how they.
Go
That's
ahead.
how they market the whole show. It's like root for your sports team.
Yeah, that's kind of what it
Bias.
feels like.
Yeah, where the books, I do agree, they are different. Where I feel like they went with the name Game of Thrones for the show not just because it sounds good, but they really did commit to making the show about the throne.
Well, I think they committed to it later than earlier, though. Because I don't think they thought it was going to be as popular as it was, and that they were going to run out of source material so quickly. Because that's why they
Right.
split off the third and fourth season into two, and then they kept. Because, I mean, they're still putting stuff from the books in the show. Season 6, they were still putting stuff from the fourth book in there with Jaime's storyline for whatever reason, even though it didn't really make sense with River Run and whatnot. You know, like when because you read them, when he's alluding to launching the baby and the catapult, that's taken from the book. Because, you know, Jaime's not a good character. He threatens to kill babies.
Well, nah, nobody's perfect.
Exactly. I don't know, it's just... I guess we have to wait for Attack of the Clones now and then Revenge of the Shit. And
I was really confident in my Azora High prediction, and it seems weird. It seemed like as the Azora High prophecy was in the center of A Song of Ice and Fire, to me at least. Maybe it was just that I read too many fan theories, but I thought that was like the core of the story was how the prophecy was going to be realized and in what symbolic form. But if the White Walkers are gone, then that prophecy doesn't really I don't know, it doesn't really have any substance to it anymore.
well,
I had a huge problem with that because it bothered me that there's an entire religion based around this event, or at least resolving this event, and they had built so much of it in earlier seasons and even alluded to Red Priests and Volantis. That's where Melisandre went after she was exiled from Winterfell. There were multiple Red Priests, yet only Melisandre shows up for this, you know, penultimate battle that has to do with everything in their religion. And she's the only one who shows up. I understand that for show purposes and for staying true to that character, that was her purpose. But why even establish a religion around it if you were just gonna be like, oh well, it's resolved when the Night King dies? Like that was her whole purpose all along. It's not like she was involved in politics with Stannis and trying to find her prophet or really force her vision on the world. None of that mattered because she just started a fire and then walked off and died.
yeah, she started a fire on the Dothraki swords, let them sacrifice themselves in battle for no reason whatsoever. Just like, peace, Dothraki, we don't need you anyways. Goodbye, like 2,000 perfectly good soldiers that could have just hung out in the castle and protected people. But nope. But,
I personally, maybe it was because I was tired and I was cold and
no,
early in the
I
morning,
like that
but
scene too.
I thought that was really creepy. Like I felt like I wanted to puke because I didn't know what was gonna happen, and then just to slowly see the lights go out.
No,
that
that
was cool.
like from a motif standpoint, I did really like that too. Like the first 15 minutes I thought were great. Like, because it really did start establishing, like, there's some danger here. Like, you can't see the enemy, but they're coming, sort of thing. I thought that was great.
Like, and there's that, it's like almost Lovecraftian of the feeling like 99% of the time when you're watching TV or something, it's during the daytime, or when you're out by yourself, you're out during the daytime, and the feeling that things still happen just as often during the nighttime, it's just that it's less safe. That, like, creepy, like, uneasy feeling of you can't see anything, it's, you shouldn't be up at this hour. Like, that I really felt in the beginning of this episode, for sure.
Yeah. And
I wanted to...
No, go for it.
Go ahead, though.
No, go for it, because I'm going to go on a completely different topic.
Okay, I just wanted to add, like, I thought the first, half of that, and even up the Dothraki charge, I loved all of that. But for me personally, I wish they added more of, like, a human element to all of this, where I almost wish the Dothraki would just be like, yeah, Daenerys, you're our queen, but we really don't want to just fucking die. I would kind of wanted to see more people abandoning the post. Although, I will say the scene was beautiful, and I like that I got that. I wish maybe in other aspects of it, I wish they showed people, like, doing a mutiny, or just the common soldier being like, fuck this, like, we're dying, we're freezing, we don't want to be here. I think that would have been a bit cooler of an aspect to have, and then have the main characters be, like, super powerful and, like, really standing up for what they believe, because then maybe their plot armor would be a bit more... I think I'd be okay with it if they established that, like, the common men, or the people you weren't familiar, were having trouble rallying against this unstoppable threat.
But... Or even some of the main characters, like Sam's the only one who you see, like, fucking hating his life. Everyone else is like, I'll be the hero, I can do this, and it's like, it takes until near the end of the episode to see it on their faces, like, we are going to die, like, this is it.
Right, it was, for me, I think my biggest issue I can't get around is that it's really complex, deep, intricate characters just swinging swords at zombies for an hour and 20 minutes, and that kills me in my core.
The actors are so good. I definitely feel like they could benefit from George R.R. Martin's writing at this point, but...
And I wanted to throw something else out that I think would have been the icing on, or like the cherry on top of that Dothraki charge. There was a guy who did a breakdown called Buzz Talks, and he said he thought that the Dothraki were all going to rise undead and charge back. And I'm like, man, if they did that,
that'd be awesome.
That's what I thought.
That would have made, you would have been like, man, the undead are truly terrifying, which is how I felt for the beginning of the episode. But as soon as characters' plot armor started to show, and they had to tone down how powerful the undead were, because at first when they were just rolling over the Unsullied like a wave, you were like, oh no, like this is as bad as it gets. But then as soon as you got down to the main characters being left, it's like they had to tone back and just be like, okay, the undead aren't that powerful, we gotta really bring them back, they're too good.
Yeah, because John's surrounded by, like, oh, wait, what were you saying?
Oh, go ahead, I'm done.
Well, John was surrounded by like 30, 40 like recently risen dead, and then the next shot we see him in, there's 3 in front of him and 1 behind him. It's like, he's gonna be okay, guys, don't worry. Like, he fights the 3 in front of him, turns around, kills the 1. It's like, okay, carry on now, like, no danger. That Dothraki thing would actually be really cool, though, if they all charge back, and it's like, holy shit. But the one thing, when they did charge in there, just blindly with the Dothraki and Jorah for whatever reason, Ghost went in there with him, but Ghost never came back. So
he didn't die.
Yeah,
he didn't die.
But why wasn't Ghost by Jon's side?
I know.
Like, what? That makes no fucking sense.
With Ghost than the dragon.
Yeah, why is he fighting alongside with Jorah on the front lines with the Dothraki? They were basically just saying, all right, goodbye, Ghost. Because when you charge in like that in military strategy, you probably expect that first line to get killed because you're testing them. So all the Dothraki were just bait being used to, like, sacrifice. So why would Jon send in Ghost? Like, does he just not give a shit about his direwolf anymore?
Probably logistical reasons with filming. I'm sure that was not their first choice of what to do with Ghost.
It seems like it was their first choice because that's the first time he's popped up in 2 seasons.
I hope to God it wasn't.
But I was gonna go back off the Azor Ahai conversation because if the prophecies are to be fulfilled, as they kind of alluded to that they were, that's why Beric Dondarrion was allowed to die. That's why Melisandre went off and died. That means that Arya was Azor Ahai, because everybody who was resurrected was resurrected to help her. Beric Dondarrion was resurrected all those times just to help her in like season 3 when with the Hound and whatnot, the trial by combat and everything. It's just for that purpose, was to get Arya to the point where she could kill the Night King. She even kind of says that. She's like, hey, like Beric Dondarrion, like, he's allowed to die now because his purpose has been served. His purpose was you. And what they're basically saying is, you are Azor Ahai. You are the reason why Jon was resurrected. Jon was only resurrected to get everybody into Winterfell so that Arya could kill the Night King like she did. Like, that's the whole purpose of that whole scene, even though they just kind of glossed over it.
And I also want to add, the Song of Ice and Fire is based off of that poem. Is the poem called Fire and Ice?
Not sure.
Here, I'm going to look it up, but I'll talk about it while I'm doing that. Well, it's a poem that says, basically, like, the world, I can imagine the world ending in ice. Ice is hate, ice is betrayal. But I can also see it ending in fire, and that's also a great guess if the world's going to end. That's basically what the poem is about, and that's where I've read that George R.R. Martin got the idea of the Song of Ice and Fire. And so I really thought that fire and ice wouldn't be so simple as, like, ice is bad, fire is good. I thought it was more like both of them are aspects of humanity that, when left unchecked, will cause us to destroy ourselves. And if the way things are going, it's like, oh, fire is life, fire is awesome, ice is bad, destroy it. But, like, I definitely know for a fact that Melisandre, at least in the books, and in the show, gave a big speech about how there are only two sides. There is black, there is white, there is good, there is evil. There is fire and there is ice, and you have to choose. And George R.R. Martin set it up to make a point to prove her wrong later on, and show how fire was not just a positive force. The Hound was burned by fire as a kid, and it stained him for the rest of his life. And I was really looking forward to how that is going to poetically intertwine with the end of the story. And I don't know if we're gonna see that on the show.
Well, I don't know if it'll intertwine with the end of the story or not. I assume it is, especially if he wants it to. But it already has kind of been put into effect in the books with Brienne's character, because Beric Dondarrion in the books sacrifices his life to the Lord of Light to bring back Catelyn Stark, and we get Lady Stoneheart. And Lady Stoneheart's purpose is just wreaking vengeance on everybody that wronged her. So that's why she's hanging Brienne and trying to take people's lives and hanging all the Frey. I think she hangs a couple Freys as revenge for the Red Wedding, and she's trying to move further up the Frey family and trying to get Brienne to murder Jaime. And that's fire as well. Fire turns into this revenge-filled, driven hatred machine.
Desire and ambition and anger and, like, revenge.
Pure anger, yeah.
Where ice can also be bad in, like, Ned Stark with his dumb honor to the point where he's about to let his daughter Sansa get killed because he doesn't want to tell a lie. Like, I really like that from the beginning of the story where it was like ice and fire in I don't know, those kinds of ways. Not so literal.
The first thing that he does in both the show and the books is he kills an innocent man with his sword, ice. And I mean, I believe there's a lot more importance to his sword being called ice than they really alluded to in the show and whatnot. Because there's obviously a lot of purpose with that, especially if the whole series starts with that scene of him cutting off someone's head with his sword called ice of fire and whatnot. So
definitely.
But yeah,
I really hope we get those. I really hope we get the answers, or at least like subtle answers, at least in the books.
I just hope we get something more story driven in the show in these next 3 episodes, because we've had 6 episodes to go. 2 of them were filler episodes, and after seeing this episode, that makes the second episode even more of a filler episode, because they spent the entire time saying goodbye to characters they didn't even kill. And It's like we've learned nothing in the past 3 episodes. I mean, this last episode wasn't a filler episode. Obviously, it's a big deal that they finally killed the dead. But we didn't learn anything. We didn't figure anything out other than you can't kill the Ice King with dragon fire. Other than that, we didn't learn anything.
That it makes almost no sense, seeing as that dragon glass is made of dragon fire and Valyrian magic, and the Valyrian steel also has properties based on dragons, yet somehow that doesn't harm the Night King when the cat's paw dagger does.
Well, I don't know if you watched the episode, but when they hit him with the fire, it didn't work. So your argument's invalid.
I know. I'm just saying.
And then people are saying like, "Oh, that means the Night King's a Targaryen." Like, well, he's also a magical blue little beast thing, so I don't know if that has to do with him not being harmed by fire either, but who knows?
I hate to say it, but at this point, I'm done theorizing with the show's story, because they obviously just are going to go with the most elementary possible outcome. Because like we were saying last week, I really hope it's not just that the dead are there because they're just pure evil, and that's their purpose. And that was their purpose, apparently. They're just evil, so evil had to lose. The end. It's like, okay.
Yeah, they kind of took Bran's story and just
chucked it out the window like they did to him in season 1.
Seriously. Bran's story ended when he fell out the window. That's as much as I could say. This episode quite literally killed Bran's storyline, and it had nothing important. And Bran willingly let Theon die, knowing that Arya was right around the corner, which apparently Winterfell is now massive, and it took her forever to run there. But
yeah, and Jon got lost.
Jon got lost in Winterfell. It was the scale of the building changed to where it was ginormous, and only main characters were allowed inside.
Oh, and also, I'm a really stupid movie watcher, just in general. And when I thought that Rhaegal, if that's his name, Rhaegal killed the ice dragon, and then when another ice dragon comes down on Jon, I thought that was Drogon. I thought Drogon had gotten turned into an ice dragon, and I was like, oh my god. This is terrible.
You're not the only one that thought that, and
really,
I mean, I didn't think that, but I've seen a lot of people online think that same thing, because it really wasn't clear. You see Drogon fly off, and he's covered with the dead on him as they're plummeting to the ground. Like, a lot of it just wasn't clear of what's actually happening.
Can we talk about the lighting?
Yeah. One of my favorite things online was saying that Melisandre's fire, the moon, and the dragon's fire breath are the real heroes of the episode for letting us see what's going on.
I actually, you guys can give your critiques, but I didn't mind the lighting, like, at all. I thought it was fine.
Well, I personally could see everything. I did think parts of it were really dark, and adding a blizzard to it made it like kind of difficult to tell what was actually going on. But I think that was more so the shots they decided to use than it was the lighting for me.
Yeah, it was. I watched the behind the scenes, and it looked like on the set you could see everything perfectly fine, but I felt like they just like washed or went over the camera in like editing. It looked like
Day to night.
They just fucking darkened the whole thing. On my TV, I sat down and watched it with my brother, and we watched it in the dark on a nice TV, and the first 40 minutes you could barely tell what was going on. Or well, up to the point where Melisandre ignited the trench. That, and then so all the stuff before that was pretty hard to see, and then the entire portion of the dragons fighting in the sky until they broke above the clouds was impossible to really tell what was going on.
Yeah, and let's talk about that dragon fighting sequence, because I don't know if you guys watched it very closely. Those are probably some of the worst effects of the episode, because it just kind of looked like they didn't render it out in like 29.97 frames, and instead it was like down to 13 frames, so it's kind of like clipping a lot, where the dragons are like, but they're moving in a strange way. I guess it's because the lightning that was there out of nowhere, or whatever the fuck was going on. It just didn't look very good. I don't know.
That, and it bothered me that the entire dragon fight was practically a waste once you discover that fire can't hurt the Night King.
Well,
so it felt that like all those shots were filler, and this episode really did not need to be as long as it was, in my opinion, with how much they took, and they were just like, yeah, we saved characters about 8 times each in this episode. The dragon fighting didn't need to happen. There was just so much that they could have cut out and just made it a flat hour or 50 minutes.
Speaking of filler, though, in the Night King, if the Night King's purpose was to go kill Bran, why the fuck is he fighting dragons? Why didn't he just go straight to Bran? Why is he wasting that time fighting the dragons?
Someone wrote a list that just basically explained that the White Walkers were filler, and gave alternate plot points for each character who died by a White Walker. What's his name? Jorah died by the grayscale. Theon froze to death after rescuing Sansa. There's others.
Dolores fell off the wall. Whoops.
I just want to make note that not a single White Walker, like an actual, I don't know, I think they're referred, when they say the others in the book, they actually mean the ones with the blue eyes and the capability, or the powers, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just want to clarify, not a single one of them fought a person in this episode.
That's correct.
And that's fine, because it makes sense that they sent in their miscellaneous army. And I mean, from the Dead's perspective, they did what they had to do, just send in endless wave after wave after wave after wave until they finally just break them. Which,
right.
Yeah.
They don't need to be there. They never said why Night King has to kill Bran with his sword.
Yeah, it just didn't make sense.
No purpose for all of them to be there. If they're the source of power for the army, it's like, it feels like a Marvel movie, except they miss like the main point of the bad guy's flaw, is that he shouldn't be there. So usually you write a reason why the enemy wants to, usually like in Breaking Bad, Gus Fring goes
to... because he just wants to torture him. I was about to bring it up.
That's his downfall. The Night King goes to kill, but he doesn't have hubris, he doesn't have pride, he's just, they never establish a reason why he has to go and be the one to kill Bran. Maybe they'll do it in the next 3 episodes, but I can tell you right now, I have zero feelings for Bran's story now that the Night King's dead. What can Bran, or this way. I can't see Bran or Sansa putting themselves in danger for the rest of the show. Like, what situation would they go to King's Landing?
And what army are they going to use to attack King's Landing? Because in the trailers, they've been showing like hundreds of soldiers marching out of Winterfell. What fucking soldiers did they have left?
None.
Exactly. Like, where are they using like the undead that were left over that didn't fall from the Ice King? Like, what movie was that? When like the hive mind got destroyed and it left all the pawns, and then the pawns were used as like wrangling up grocery carts at stores and whatnot and helping out society. I think they did that in like Shaun of the Dead, where the zombies get reintroduced into society. Kind of like District 9, where they don't know what they're doing there, so the aliens are kind of like put off in their own little area. They should do that with the remaining dead, if there is any. Like, that would be funny. But I do like that you brought up Breaking Bad, though, because I hate to compare two shows that are completely different. But you know what? I'm just going to say it. Breaking Bad was a masterpiece for the reason that the story of the show is about a guy who gets cancer and he's trying to provide for his family before he dies. The ultimate tragedy of the show is by the ending season, he is considered a fugitive and all that money is going to be detained and he can't get any to his family. And that's why at the peak episode of Ozymandias, which, spoiler alert, when he gets his brother-in-law killed and he gets all of his money stolen that he had accrued from everything, and when he goes to face his family and get them out of town, they shun him because they know who he is, and his son basically stands up for his mother and calls the police on him, trying to get him thrown into jail. Everything leading up in that show is leading up to that moment of his character basically losing his family when his whole goal is to provide for his family when he dies. He loses sight of who he is, he loses sight of his goal, but his purpose in that story never changes. Game of Thrones, I don't know what it's about anymore. And I don't know what the purpose of all these characters are. And I don't, like you're saying, Bran's story just flew out the window like he did in season 1. And everything that's happened with him becoming the Three-Eyed Crow, it means nothing. And everything that's happened with Jon Snow on the wall and getting all the wildlings together and all his mutiny that he had to go through and die for, it just, all his story was just so Arya could stab the Night King. Like, that was the whole purpose of everything. Well, what does it mean now that we have 3 more episodes? We have 4.5 hours of the show to go, and it's just going to be battling Cersei. Like, she's the ultimate evil. Like, is that?
I don't care about.
Yeah,
I don't care about the Iron Throne.
What's the purpose?
I want them to just stay in Winterfell, let Cersei be in King's Landing, and then if Cersei sends troops north, just burn them with a dragon, and then if not, just live out the rest of your days.
Yeah, it's just I don't know why we need to care or give a shit, because I mean Dany's become so flat these past couple seasons that I'm not behind her. I don't give a shit if she gets the Iron Throne at this point. Like, why are we supposed to be invested and actually give a shit? Other than the fact that they tell us, hey, this is the part where you're supposed to be scared. This is the part where you got to feel this.
Although I will say, I would not want to see her get eaten alive and then turned into a White Walker, which is what I would.
Oh yeah.
whatever I thought I saw.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I almost want these last 3 episodes to just be I either want them to be just peaceful for Game of Thrones standards and just sort of have a long closing statement, or for there to be a twist that isn't just Cersei and Euron, because those two are maybe the most boring antagonist the show has ever seen yet.
Yeah, and I mean,
boring might not be the right word. Just they're not powerful antagonists in that I want to see them destroyed.
Yeah, and it's like we have 3 more episodes that are an hour and a half each. I'm half expecting that at least one of those episodes is going to be another filler episode where they just kind of like go over, this is what we're going to do to Cersei and this is what we got to plan. But it's like, if the next episode's an hour and a half, why do I want to sit down for an hour and a half and watch them get ready to go to battle?
And I really think there's going to be a twist. So is it going to...
I hope so.
What is the twist going to be? Is it going to be that Daenerys and Jon turn on each other?
Or the twist is that the fans turn on the show and don't even tune in to the 5th episode.
Here's the twist. It's been under our noses the entire time. We've seen it at the start of every episode, and we never said anything about it. The Starks were never the main characters. It was always the Lannisters. I mean, Peter Dinklage, Nikolai Coster-Waldau, and Lena Headey are the top 3 billed actors. So, joke's on us. The Starks have nothing left to do. It's all about the Lannisters. They're the main characters the whole time.
Yeah, we just focus on Cersei for the next 3 episodes. You know, honestly, I wouldn't be that disappointed if it was to do something like that.
I would definitely agree with you if they didn't cut out my absolute favorite dramatic conflict in the entire series that they cut out from the show and was originally in the books, where Tyrion finds out that when Jaime said that Tysha, Tyrion's first love, was a prostitute, he was lying and she wasn't. She was just a girl who his father had a bunch of people rape. And when Jaime helps Tyrion out of jail, Tyrion said, "Why did you help me?" And then Jaime said, "It's because I felt bad for something I did to you a long time ago." And then Jaime's like, Tysha was she was like not paid to love you. She genuinely did love you. And then Tyrion, because he's mad, says, "All right, well, I don't forgive you, and also I killed your son." He lies and said he killed Joffrey. And then when they're separated, they actually have reason to hate each other, aside from whatever happens in the show where they're just separated and they're like, "All right, old bro, best of luck to you." And so in the show, the Lannister family isn't nearly as tragic or like poetic as they are in the book. Sorry to run off on a tangent, but like
when I always believed, and I still believe that it might happen in the books, that Tyrion is actually a Targaryen, because there was a point in one of Dany's chapters when she's talking to Barristan Selmy, and Barristan Selmy's talking about how one of the Targaryen kings was very fond of Tywin's sister, and that they would kind of fool around with each other. And Tywin always said, like, "You're no son of mine." He always treated him like he was a bastard child. But he always pretended that he wanted him alive, even though it always seemed like he wanted to get him killed. And I feel like Tyrion being a Targaryen would make a lot of sense from his family perspective and whatnot, why he's deformed and everything because of the genes of... I can't remember how they describe it, but there's something with some Targaryen children that come out kind of fucked up. And
the incest.
Yeah, but this wasn't incest in this case, though, because it was with Tywin's sister. But there's a moment in season 4, right before the Red Viper fights the Mountain, when Tyrion and Jaime are talking about crushing beetles. Crush them, smash the beetles, duh, duh. And they're trying to come up with all the different words for how to kill someone. So infanticide, suicide,
regicide.
Yeah, all that stuff. And they're thinking and they're thinking and they're coming up with them and they're like, everything has a word for killing, except for cousins. And he looks at me, he's like, "You're right. No one's come up with a word for killing cousins. Good on you. And I was kind of thinking about that. If Tywin's sister gave birth to Tyrion, that would make them cousins. And wouldn't that be a very smart thing for the show to do if it was like, hey, by the way, Tyrion's a Targaryen and he has to kill Jaime or Jaime has to kill him or something. So what if Tyrion was supposed to sit on the throne and then Jaime's put in a spot where he has to kill him? That would be interesting. But I really don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think the show is way too simplified.
That is interesting, though.
But I feel like we've gone over the episode. We've gotten our thoughts out. Does anybody have any closing remarks?
Oh, one more. There is in the books and in the show, I think, I really admired the character Var, because you wonder why he always does the things that he's doing, and he seems so suspicious all the time. But in a way, I think he's maybe one of the purest characters in the entire series, where he had his injury as a child, and then from then on, the rest of his life, he kind of looks after children. And I really liked just that quick shot of him in the crypt huddled around with the children, like towards the very end of the episode. I just thought it was a nice touch because it shows like what he finds it important. Not that he thinks children are important in a creepy way, but that he's genuinely trying to protect the innocent.
I was about to say, yeah, when Varys protects children, it's considered good and wholesome. But when Michael Jackson does it, he goes to jail or he gets in trouble. They both had similar childhoods.
I mean, it's pretty clear that all remaining drama or good character drama is going to be between the Lannisters, and I think I'm very sad that there's not much story reason for the Starks to hang around or to be put into much danger now. Arya and Jon can obviously still face some sort of danger, but even Jon, it feels like he doesn't have much of a reason to help Daenerys claim the throne, even if it is his title and it is his name to take the throne. I don't think it's in his character to want to fulfill that. So I'm really only looking forward to Jaime's plotline and Tyrion's at this point. But mainly Jaime. He's really the only character that I have any sort of feelings left for. So I'm going to be watching the next 3 episodes almost purely for Jaime.
And I also would like to add on to that, I'd almost like to see Arya give up now. I really want that night, if that's how they're going to end the Night King, I want her to not seek out, like, heroism anymore, and I want her to kind of, like, enjoy the rest of her life. Maybe travel or, like, stay at Winterfell, but, like, I agree, I don't really see much continuation of the Stark storyline at this point. I really wouldn't feel comfortable with Sansa and Arya and Bran going to King's Landing to fight Cersei.
There's no reason for them to, and I think at this point for Arya, she already gave up on her list to be at Winterfell. I thought it would have been a cooler storyline had she gone to King's Landing and tried to complete her list before helping at or fighting the undead. But I hope she just drops her list and we just get to see drama between the Lannisters, like actual drama between Tyrion, Cersei, and Jaime. And then, because that adds purpose to Euron, who has almost no character whatsoever. But he could be a guy who fights Jaime, and Jaime somehow has to best a super dangerous guy with one hand. And I guess Brienne's still around, even though her character arc is over. I guess she'll just be there too.
Well, that was our discussion of the 3rd episode of this final season of Game of Thrones. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week when we all may be just as disappointed. Except for Heron. He may join us in his disappointment.
Thanks.
All right. Peace. Deuces. Loves.
See ya.